Good morning, boys and girls. Today this video is going to be about multiplying with decimals. And we are going to be using the same things that we used before in this past week where we were multiplying with double-digit numbers, except we're going to be multiplying with decimals, so we have to adjust the place values. So if you can recall from last month's calendar grid, we solved a whole number equation and then adjusted the answer for a similar decimal equation. And that's what we're going to be doing here today. So you might want to have your journals out and open to a plain blank page. The top of the page would say multiplying with decimals. And then you can stop the video and write, the first thing we do is solve the whole number equation, and the second thing we do is adjust the place values. Other than that, it's just like the multiplication we have been doing. So let's see what I mean. Let's take 4 and 25 hundredths times 1 and 8 tenths. If we were going to estimate that first, which I'd like you to do for everything that you are actually calculating, we would look at this and say, well, that's really close to 4 times 2. And 4 times 2 is 8. And so that we know that our actual answer is going to be somewhere around 8. And it's probably, we don't know whether it's an overestimate or an underestimate because we brought this down to equal 4 and we brought this up just a tiny bit to equal 2. And so it's probably pretty close to the actual answer. How do we do that? We think of this equation as a whole number equation. Instead of 4 and 25 hundredths, we make it 425. Instead of 1 and 8 tenths, we make it 18. So we've taken out the actual decimal points and we solve that problem. So we say 8 times 5 is 40. We put down the 0, carry the 4. 8 times 2 is 16, plus 4 more is 20. Put down the 0, carry the 2. 8 times 4 is 32, plus 2 more is 34. So our first partial product is 3,400. We then cross out what we carried and we put down our place value 0. And the reason we need to put down our place value 0 is that we know that this 1 is really worth 10. So we put down our place value 0 and we know that 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 4 is 4. Now, the next step is to add up our two partial products, and we get 7,650. So if this were a whole number equation, it would equal 7,650. But it isn't. In fact, 4 and 25 hundredths is 2 place values less than 425, and 1 and 8 tenths is 1 place value less than 18. And so together the entire equation is going to be 3 place values less than our whole number product. And so if we are going to adjust the place values, we make it 1 place value less, 2 place values less, 3 place values less, and we end up with an answer of 7 and either 65 hundredths or 650 thousandths. And that is our answer. We compare it to our estimate, and yep, it is pretty close to the number 8. So that's how we're going to do multiplying with decimals. We're going to think about the whole number, and then we're going to adjust for place values. But you don't have to rewrite this whole problem. Let me show you what I mean. So if our next one is 52 6/10 times 8 4/10. We first need to estimate it. And if we estimate that answer, we're going to say probably 50 times 8. We know that 8 times 5 is 40, and we move up one place value. So our answer is going to be about 400. And we know that that's an underestimate because we rounded down on both of these. So it's going to be an underestimate. Okay. Now, in my next one, you can see here I rewrote it as a whole number equation or problem. Here I'm not going to rewrite it. I'm just going to, for now, ignore these decimal points. I'm going to solve this as if it were 526 times 84. I am not going to put any decimal points in my partial products, and that's really important because that is something that might mess you up later on. So we're not going to put in any decimal points. In the same way, we don't put any commas when we're doing whole numbers. We wait until the end to put our commas in when we're solving whole number multiplication problems. So here we go, using the standard algorithm. So here I'm going to say 4 times 6 is 24. I put down the 4, carry the 2. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 more is 10. I put down the 0 and I carry the 1. 4 times 5 is 20, plus 1 more is 21. Okay, so I have my first partial product. As if I'm dealing with this as being two whole numbers rather than two decimal numbers. Now, as we've said a million times, the next thing you need to do is to cross out anything that you've carried so that you don't get confused. Then we look at this. Remember, this decimal point we're making believe isn't there, so this would be an 8, which would really be 80. So we put down our place value 0. Then we say 8 times 6 is 48. We put down the 8, carry the 4. 8 times 2 is 16, plus 4 more is 20. I put down the 0, carry the 2. 8 times 5 is 40, plus 2 more is 42. Now I have my two partial products, and I add them together. This would be 4, 8, 1, 4, 4. Now I could look at my estimate and decide where that decimal point goes. And I'm sure most of you looking at this can look at this and know exactly where the decimal point should go. But let's look at place values. Well, 52 6/10 is one place value less than 526. And 8 4/10 is one place value less than 84. And so that means the entire equation is two place values less. So if it's two place values less, we move the decimal point to the left, two place values, and we put in our decimal point. And so if we compare this, we now have for our answer 441 84/100. And that is very close to our estimate of 400. So I didn't have to rewrite it. It is a little bit confusing to remember that this, if we're solving it for a whole number equation, that this would be 84 instead of 8.4. So if you want to rewrite it as a whole number equation, you can. But remember, we don't ever put commas in the partial products, and we don't ever put decimal points in the partial products. We wait until the final product to do that. Okay, so these two examples, and one of the things I'm going to be asking you to do is to write story problems that would match these problems. You have to be very careful when you're writing story problems to match these examples. You have to use things that you can have a portion of a whole. Therefore, you can't be using people. I don't want to see 8/10 of a person. So what are some things that we use? We could say that we had 4 25/100 containers, or you could say, because this is equal to 4 1/4, 4 1/4 containers, and in each container was 1 8/10 pounds of cheese. What is the total amount of cheese that we have? And so we would come back and it would be 7 65/100 pounds of cheese. So weight you can cut into portions. Money can be portions. You're always welcome to add a zero, a place value 0 on the end, and make this $8.40 if it makes sense for the equation. So be careful with that. We're going to try one more together, and then I'm going to ask you to try some on your own. Okay, so let's say we have, I think I'm going to do 628. I'm not going to put in any decimal points on that one. Times 54/100. Okay, so the first thing I do always is to estimate it. And I think I'm going to make 628, 600. And then I'm going to make 54/100 1. Now, I know that's going to be an overestimate, but I'm still going to keep it. It's going to be about 600. In my head, though, boys and girls, I know that this is very close to a half. So in my head, I know it's going to be a little bit more than 300. But you'll get to that point. You might not be there right now. All right. I'm going to look at this as being 628 times 54. And I'm going to ignore the fact that there's a decimal point there for now. I'm going to solve the whole number equation and adjust the place values afterwards. So 4 times 8 is 32. Put down the 2, carry the 3. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 more is 11. Put down the 1, carry the 1. 4 times 6 is 24, plus 1 more is 25. Again, I'm not putting decimal points in my partial products. The next step, as I remember, for the next part, I have to cross out whatever I carried so that I don't get confused with it next time. If there's no decimal point there and I'm solving a whole number equation, this would be 50. I want to be able to multiply it as if it were a 5, so I put down my place value 0. 5 times 8 is 40. Put down the 0, carry the 4. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 4 more is 14. Put down the 4, carry the 1. 5 times 6 is 30, plus 1 more is 31. Now I have both of my partial products, and I'm going to add them together. So I have 2 plus 0 is 2. 1 plus 0 is 1. 5 plus 4 is 9. 2 plus 1 is 3. And there we have a 3 here. So remember, I knew that this was going to be an overestimate. I really knew that this was close to a half, so this would be closer to 300. So I can decide where my place value, where my decimal point goes once I adjust my place values. And I would say by the estimate, knowing that this is a very big overestimate, that my decimal point would go here. But let's look at the place values. Well, 628 is 628. I didn't do any place values less. Here I said it was 54, but it's really 54 hundredths. So that's 2 place values less. So again, in order to adjust my place values, I start at the ones place here, bring it 1 place value, 2 place values, and in fact, that is my final answer, 339 and 12 hundredths. And I compare it to my estimate, knowing that my estimate was a pretty large overestimate. And that's how we did it. So again, it's just practicing your multiplication algorithms for the whole numbers and then adjusting it for your answers by looking at how many place values less it is than the whole number equations. So good luck with it. Have some fun. Don't worry about getting it wrong. We're going to be talking about it in the Zoom class, but I'd like to see how you do on this after you look at the video and write some notes about what you should be doing. Have a great day, boys and girls.